Yo, how you doing? I know it's been a minute since I did a video, but I wanted to go ahead and just update the situation in Venezuela because I know there's only a few outlets covering it out here in the U.S. You got a lot of independent journalists. Primarily, you have Mint Press, which is probably the most accurate and concise news outlet when it comes to details. The next, and that's published though. When it comes to videos, I know Lee Camp's been doing a great job. I know Jimmy Dore actually has been doing a pretty good job, and I have to say Max Blumenthal is probably doing like the best job going out, actually investigating, using his leverage, his privilege, his talents to really expose a lot of capitalism's lies about what's going on in Latin America, and really the world in general, especially though what's going on in Venezuela. So once again, today the reason I'm making this video is why is Marxism important? We have a lot of confusion when it comes to Marxism. Some people don't want to call themselves Marxists. Some people prefer to call themselves Marxian and make the distinction. At the end of the day, it's rhetoric, and it's important for us to not subdivide ourselves. When it comes to Marxism, specifically Marxism, it's revolutionary socialism. I had someone ask me questions about socialism when he found out I was a socialist. Gentleman was not a socialist. In fact, clearly said he did not like socialism. He said he preferred the capitalist free enterprise, quote unquote, system. We went back and forth. It was a good conversation. It was productive. There's conservatives you can have a conversation with where they're curious about your opinions about certain characteristics of and nuances of what socialism is, and others really have a whole list of talking points, and they're not really trying to have a conversation. They really just want to ask you a question so that they can follow up with a rebuttal before you can even finish your answer, and basically try to smear and characterize, really cartoonize a lot of socialism's valid ideological doctrines when it comes to the field of economics, politics, organization, etc. So he asked me, he said, he was curious. He was saying, you're a socialist, huh? Well, a lot of people call themselves socialists, and I don't think they know what that means. So that I was like, oh, really? And you know what? And he was right. Even though he's not a socialist, he's very accurate in that. In fact, a lot of democratic socialists don't understand that democratic socialism is capitalism. It's a highly regulated form of capitalism, but it's still capitalism. So when you have people trying to proclaim to be socialists and then at the same time call themselves democratic socialists, or don't know the difference between what democratic socialism is, conservative socialism, bourgeois socialism, clerical socialism, revolutionary socialism, utopian socialism, etc., they really have an opinion? And that's the one thing I've come across with a lot of my work in leftist organizations, where you have people really trying to promote their ideological beliefs, but they only get so far. A lot of times they become reactionary when the truth becomes too blatantly obvious or too uncomfortable for some of these people. And you see it with a lot of the anarchists, that don't understand that you have to first get a hold of the state before you can even talk about abolishing capital or even the abolition or withering away of the state. You see, because they're utopian, they don't understand that there's a sequence to this. And that's one thing that Marx was very clear about. He was a historical materialist, so he very succinctly saw that there's a hierarchy. And for example, if you have a monarchy and you have bourgeois elements fighting that monarchy, socialists should, revolutionary socialists should help, should develop ideological arguments to further create that division between this bourgeois class of monarchies, right, and then this upsurgent bourgeois class, right? Because once again, capitalism is revolutionary as well. I don't want to get into how, but I mean, just in a nutshell, before the actual full development of capitalism, right, you had monarchies in a bunch of countries. It was through the birth of this bourgeois class that arose and was able to erode through capital, the accumulation of capital, erode a lot of the privileges of these monarchies, like land. Once the inheritance of land, and divine right and all this kind of went to the wayside, you had these bourgeois elements saying, well, if we can buy it, property rights, this and that. So then you see the differences and those antagonisms working themselves out to the point that the bourgeois class literally overtook a lot of these monarchical elements and made them almost like a background noise in these states. At the same time, there are still monarchies, and even within some of those, you have like monarchical capitalist societies a lot of times with these, because what happens is, okay, you have bourgeois elements taking over, but bourgeois elements are still going to be reactionary. Okay, so so then obviously once you have monarchies being toppled by bourgeois elements, and you have now this bourgeois element on top, that's where the workers start organizing to take over, right? Take over this bourgeois element. And that's one way. Obviously, you can bypass that part and have a revolutionary movement, essentially topple a leadership of bourgeois class. You see in Russia, you had a combination of those. And, once again, 1917, right? We got to remember that it wasn't just one revolution in 1917. There was two revolutions. And at the same time, we have to remember that the Russian Revolution wasn't just in 1917. They had various revolutions before that granted them certain privileges that allowed the workers and some of the more bourgeois reactionary elements to position themselves in the state and actually influence some of the power structures. And that's essentially what happened, where you had Kerensky's government coming in as more like a democratic socialist government, bourgeois, reactionary, and then you had Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin essentially taking over this weak power structure to the point that they not only eliminated any potentiality of a monarchy coming back, but they established the first socialist republic in the world. And what's important to realize about that, and this is another thing that the gentleman brought up, and once I explained to him, he was like, okay, you sound like you know what you're talking about. Socialist countries are still capitalist. Okay, a lot of anarchists don't understand this, and they ding, revolutionary movements because of that. But that's just privilege talking. At the end of the day, just like an individual, you can be a socialist, but you live in a capitalist society. Okay, those governments, just like the Chinese government, that's able to produce and come up with a lot of the commodities of the world, they are capitalist, but at the same time they're run by the Communist Party of China. So it's important to realize that having a government doesn't necessarily say or establish one ideology over another. You have a world that we live in, and this world is capitalist. Now, you can have governments run by socialists, like you do in China, like you do in Venezuela. And then, once again, you'll have those same ideological battles ensue, where you have America, you have Israel, you have a lot of these bourgeois capitalists that have influence in the capitalist world, dominate the financial world, and they exert either military, economic, or political pressure on governments through various mechanisms. But at the end of the day, you have resistance, and that's what you're seeing in this world that's becoming more multipolar. So the importance of Marxism is you have so his question was this: can socialism be fascism? And as much as I hate to associate both of those words, the fact is you can have socialism become fascism. So it's very important for us as socialists, as Marxist, Leninists, Chavistas, to understand that not only are we socialists, but we have to say we're revolutionary socialists, or that we're Marxist, Leninist, Chavistas, and because although socialism can be fascism, right, socialism can also become communism, right, which is the end goal. At the same time, that fluidity of that word becomes problematic, but Marxism leads to the path of liberation and a communal society, not fascism. And that's the difference. So you have socialism can be one way or the other. Normally it's on the left, but it can slide to the right. And at the same time, though, you have a way to cut through that dichotomy and say, actually, I'm a Marxist. And that clearly associates you with the left and with an organized movement, some kind of organizational structure, what you understand the state is and how to take over the state. All right, well, that being said, let me go ahead and quickly touch on Venezuela, because this video is running kind of long. It's already like 14 minutes. Venezuela holding strong. You got the government still resisting Maduro, legitimate, and you have these right-wingers being helped by Trump. You have a lot of help coming from the Colombian oligarchy, and you even have some mercenaries coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, and just recently some Israelis all up in the mix. So yeah, it's very important to understand that Israel has always been used by the capitalist right to successfully operate behind the scenes And there's just so many countless examples. I guess I could give you a couple just quickly because that's not what this video is about, but I guess it really just, I want you guys to get a holistic understanding of what the historical battle has been. So just Iran-Contra. Okay, has the Contras in the name. Iran-Contra scandal, that's it, right? Well, Israel was used to facilitate the movement of weapons to Iran. And I mean, that is a whole, there was cocaine involved with the Contras, cocaine being exchanged for weapons. You got CIA pilots being shot down by the Sandinista government that had toppled the Somoza dictatorship, right-wing capitalist oligarch. I mean, there's so much. It's just juicy. But just quickly, so that's one example. So you also see right now that recent example in Venezuela. You also see what Israel's doing with the Kurds, what they were doing with the Kurds in Iraq, and what they're doing in Syria right now. Just is what it is, unfortunately. But it's very important for us to understand that as revolutionary socialists, especially right now that we actually have a government in the world that is flying the flag of socialism, and it's clearly being attacked by so many elements, and it's still holding strong, that we also fly that flag of socialism and understand that really socialism, revolutionary socialism, is the doctrine, okay, of the liberation of the proletariat class through organizational resistance and struggle. So if you take anything from this video, I guess the most important part of it was the Marxism, that don't only call yourself a socialist, call yourself a revolutionary socialist, or call yourself a Marxist socialist or a Marxist Leninist. That way you define yourself. Don't let others define you, because at the end of the day in this country, run by two bourgeois elements, you have a lot of smearing that's going to happen. You got the right that's going to call anything that even resembles the left, including bourgeois Democrats, communists, and socialists, okay, even though they themselves help hinder the Democratic Socialist just 3 years ago in 2016. So define yourself, don't let others define you, and also defend socialism. We are correct, okay? It's these capitalists that have to always lie to further their imperialist ambitions, to steal the world's natural resources, impoverish countries in order to give them loans. I mean, it's sick. Capitalism is the most sadistic, the most brutal, the most disgusting, the most vicious, the most desultory, the most chaotic system that's ever evolved. And socialism sprang up as a resistance to this exploitation by the bourgeois elements, that own finance societies. So once again, Marxist right here. Call yourself a Marxist, a revolutionary socialist. We are correct. History will always absolve us, as Fidel said. Rest in peace, all my revolutionaries. Che, you know what I mean? Fred Hampton, Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, you know what I mean? Omar Torrijos, all these people. Juan Bosch, Salvador Allende, Sandino, all you peoples. Rest in peace. And we out.